Well, I'm just fishing a quick session this evening, practicing with a Bodied Waggler. It's a method that's a really effective method when you'd want to fish past where you can loose feed, so past the range of being able to fire out maggots with a catapult. And the way I'm doing it is I'm fishing around about 28 meters out, and I'm sinking the line back. So I'm probably fishing about 24 meters out, and I'm firing out balls of ground bait, which I've packed with casters and dead maggots, and I'm just trying to hit my float with the balls. It's great practice. I'm going to Ireland in a few weeks, and sometimes this method can be really effective over there, so I wanted to come and have a practice. It's a while since I've done it, and it's quite nice. I'm getting a few dumpy roach. The way I'm feeding it, obviously I'm just feeding ground bait. It's quite a heavy ground bait, and I'm catching on the bottom. And the nice thing when you're fishing with a Bodied Waggler like this is you can fish quite a positive rig. So I'll show you the rig in a bit, but basically I've got 5 number 8s in a bulk just below halfway, and I've got 2 number 8s as a dropper just above my hook length. So basically I can present my bait in a positive, a bit of a line bite, a bit of a lift bite there rather. So that was where the fish has lifted that 2 number 8 dropper and registered the bite really well. So the depth I'm fishing is around about 7 or 8 foot deep. And there you go, that's the stamp of roach that I'm catching. Lovely fish to catch. Hook bait is double red maggot. I'm fishing a size 16 B560 hook. So it's quite a, like I say, it's quite a positive method. And on another day, you know, I might be catching some skimmers and maybe even some bream. The whole thing when you're fishing with a decent sized Bodied Waggler like this is you've got to be very smooth with the cast and positive. So I'm casting it high. I've actually clipped up, so everything has hit the clip. So I know I've fixed the distance that I'm casting every time. And then I'm putting the tip well under the water and doing 3 or 4 quick turns to sink the line. I'm resting the rod on my keep net. And then the way I've set up my elastic on this catapult is, that's basically the range around about 25 meters. So I'm pulling my elastic back in the same way to its maximum every time, and the balls are going almost to the same spot around about 25 meters out. So I'll show you again. I've lined up with a tree on the far bank, so I know that I'm feeding in the similar area every time. So obviously when you're fishing at range like this, you need to be as accurate as you can. And the lake's actually towing a little bit left to right. No, sorry, right to left. And I'm fishing about 8 inches over depth. So I'll show you again. Nice positive cast. Hit the clip and then bring the float back into the feed area. The shape of the balls, it's almost like a sausage shape, so they're not round, and they fit into this Drennan ground bait pouch really nicely. So there we go, that's bang on. And you'll notice that it goes in with a bit of a plop rather than a badouche. So the ground bait I've used is Bait Tech Extra, and I've mixed it with a bit of brown crumb, and I've wet it a little bit wet. I've mixed it a little bit wet so that it binds really quickly. I'll show you my ground bait mix in a sec. We'll just see if we can get a bite. So everything's settled now, the bulk's settled and the dropper's settled. I've got the float shotted quite well down. I don't know if you'll pick it up on the video. Oh, I had a bite and I missed it. When you're using a sticky mix like this, it's great because you can basically mould the ball with your left hand while you're holding your rod waiting for a bite. Form that sausage and then feed it really efficiently and quickly. Perfect. Quite often when you're fishing like this, you hit the float and you almost get a bite straight away. It's almost like the fish are coming to the ball. So the rod I'm using is our Cadence CR10 15-foot number 2. I quite like using a longer rod, like a 15-foot rod, when I'm fishing with big floats like this, fishing at range. Just makes the job so much easier. Obviously if you're fishing a bit deeper as well, that extra length really helps. And it also helps for being able to pick up the line quicker on the strike. So that was just a fraction short, so I'm just going to pull the float into that ball, just half a turn on the reel. So I'm not sure if you can pick up on that, but I've got 2 number 8s there positioned just above my hook length. The hook length is actually edge tackle 012mm fluorocarbon, which I really like using. Fluorocarbon's a bit stiffer, so it doesn't tend to spin up so much, especially if you're using 2 or 3 maggots or casters. So then I've got, I don't know, it's going to be 30 centimeters to that bulk of number 8s. It's actually 6 number 8s, and you see I've got the shots spread slightly apart, so it's a nice positive dropper. And obviously if I wanted to, I could take some of the number 8s and push them up the line under the float if I didn't want such a positive bulk, or I could spread the shot out depending on how I want to present the bait. If I want to present the bait on the drop. And that's the float. So it's a Drake Bodied Waggler with an insert tip. It's a peacock tip, peacock stem, and then a balsa body. And it's quite a positive float really, so it's telling me it's 5.6 grams plus an additional 2 grams for your shot. And what I've done is I've used a 0.75 Drennan Waggler weight on either side of the swivel, and then I've got 2 of our edge tackle large line stops either side. And I've used 2 because obviously I'm casting with some force, and I think one might start moving, but in this case it's very secure, but I can move everything really easily and quickly without any risk of damaging the main line. I do really like these Waggler weights. I think they've kind of really transformed my fishing since I've started using them. I have got 2 number 8s down there below that line stop, which I can bring down and employ in the rig if I needed even more weight down the line. You'll notice that I'm using a swivel with a snap on it, so obviously I can change the Waggler easily if I want to change the colour, or if I want to change the pattern and style of the float. I can do that really quickly and easily. But I do like these Drake floats, and I get mine from Lanes in Coventry. I like the fact that they're semi-loaded, they cast really well, cast very accurately, and allow you to have enough shot down the line to make the rig very, very versatile. The main line I'm using is edge tackle 018 sinking mono, and it's absolutely brilliant line. Obviously having a sinking mono when you're fishing like this on a lake really helps to sink the line quicker. When it's brand new I might put some diluted washing up liquid on it, but I don't need to do that anymore now. It sinks really well. So that's the rig. See if we can catch another one. So bait wise, I'm going to try double red again, and I'm hooking the red maggot through the thin end, not the fat end, so it's leaving plenty of hook exposed. In fact, I'll show you that, if you can see that. So I feel I bump less fish. It doesn't seem to cause any too much damage to the maggots, as you can see they're very much alive and wriggling. I'd also try dead maggots. So I'm feeding dead maggots. When you're feeding ground bait like this, you don't really want to be feeding live maggots, because the balls, as the maggots wriggle, will break up. So I'm just feeding kind of inert bait today. So I'm just feeding casters and dead maggots in my ground bait. So you've got to keep the ground bait going in every cast. At the start of the session I fed 4 or 5 balls, and then I've just been topping up with 1 ball every cast. And the range I'm fishing, I wouldn't be able to loose feed maggots. So it really is a deadly method when you've got to fish further out. Maybe you've got to get out to more depth to where the fish are feeding. Maybe the wind's really bad and you can't loose feed. So fishing with a positive bodied waggler like this really is a great method. Tell you what, this is a bit better fish, nice roach, so I'm going to net that one. Wonderful. That's the sort of stamp that you want. And just great fun catching them on this wonderful method of float fishing. What a beautiful roach. So cast back to the clip, reel in 4 turns, make a ball of ground bait, try and hit the float. Pretty good. I've actually got a selection of catapults to fish at different ranges, and like I mentioned, with this size ball, which is basically the amount I can squeeze with one hand, fires the balls with this mix around about 25 meters. If I wanted to fish further out, I've got a stronger catapult, and with a bit of practice you can feed really accurately, up to, I tend to fish up to about 40 meters with that catapult. Because it's a sticky ground bait, a good tip is to have a tub with some water in, so you can just clean your hands after you've made the ball, because obviously it's sticky and some of the ground bait will stick to your hand. That looks like a bite. Yeah. So again, in that instance, the float hadn't settled. So obviously the bulk had settled, but the 2 number 8s were being held up by a fish that had intercepted it. So you've got to sort of be aware as the session progresses, if the fish are telling you that they're coming up in the water like that, you can shallow up accordingly. And conversely, if you're not getting bites and you want to present the bait harder on the bottom, then go a bit deeper. But you do find during the session that the fish will start to change their feeding behaviour, and also the stamp of the fish and the type of the fish. It'd be lovely to catch a bream. But I think in the way it is today, those smaller roach are quick to the bait. Now I'm striking up today because there's quite a lot of vegetation around me. If there wasn't so much vegetation, I might try striking to the side, but I'm having to strike up. But I'm not sort of doing a wild strike. I'm basically just lifting the rod to connect with the fish. Obviously I'm not fishing very heavy, and I don't want to strike too hard in case I hook into a better fish. But you do need to strike with some force when you're fishing at range. That wasn't a great bite, it was quite a slow bite. And this definitely feels like a better fish. The roach bites were really quite quick, or you sort of noticed that the float hadn't settled properly. But this was a really slow, deliberate bite. Be interested to see if this is a bream. Hey, it is, yeah. That's great. Yeah, so in that case, I'd left the float out there for a bit longer, hadn't had any bites or anything, and the float was holding perfectly out there, despite the fact there's a bit of a toe from right to the left. I'll just hold that up for you. It's a really nice bream. Well, whether you call it a bream or a skimmer, but it's a beautiful fish. Let me try and hold him up. Stop it, man. There we go. It's got some life in that one. So you could see then I didn't do a wild sort of strike up. I just lifted the rod and connected with the fish. That was a really nice positive bite. Feels like it might be another skimmer or a hybrid. Definitely having a kick around close in. Might actually be a small carp. Didn't fight too hard, and now it's got close in. It's yeah, it is. It's a little baby carp. That's fun. It tricked me. Well, I wasn't really expecting that, but nice little mirror carp. Gave me a good scrap on that light gear. Right, I think I'll show you the ground bait mix that I'm using, and just so you can see it up close. So yeah, the ground bait mix is this Pro Natural bait tech, and it's called River Extra. So it's quite a sticky mix, and that's why I like it when I'm fishing, firing balls of ground bait out like this. I've mixed it with about 30% brown crumb as well. And I don't know if you can see that in my bowl, but basically I've mixed it quite wet, like I said. I've got plenty of particles, plenty of dead maggots and casters in there, and I can just squeeze it like that. Just what I'm basically doing is I want to be consistent with the ball, so I'm just grabbing as much as I can with one hand, sort of forming that sausage, and that will stick together and fire out to the area where I want to feed. So that's it. Quite simple really, but it does pay to take your time to get the mix perfect and mixed evenly. And I tend to keep the bulk of my ground bait in a bowl behind me, and then sort of add it into the bowl on my side tray, so that it's not drying out while I'm fishing or getting wet if it's raining, and I can keep the consistency and the freshness of the ground bait. So I think I'll have one last cast. You can see that that float is getting to the distance I want really quite easily. If if you start struggling and sort of forcing the cast, that's when you'll start getting tangles. So you want to have a float that's going to get the distance that you want to enable you to sink the line and bring the float back to where you're feeding in a very accurate way, in a consistent way. And because the lake's not towing too much and it's not too windy, I can get away with using an insert waggler. And that's really good because it's giving me a bit more sensitivity and enabling me to really read the bites. Obviously, if it was windier or the lake was towing more, I'd use a bodied waggler with a straight peacock stem without the insert. Oh, there we go. That's another bed of fish. I don't know if it's another one of those little carp or a bream. Hey, it's a nice roach. What a great fish to end on. That is a beautiful roach. Look at that. What a beautiful fish on a really great method.